Hi, this is Mrs. Zhu, and we're working on homework on page 394, problems 9, 10, and then 20 through 26. For each of the questions tonight, you need to make a chart to show your work and also to create a graph, and you're going to create that graph yourself. On number 9, we're going to start with the equation y is equal to x minus 3. All of these equations have two variables, an x and a y. Sometimes you might see one without an x or without an y, and we'll talk about that in question 10 and also in 25 today in the video. On number 9, the first step that you're going to do is to pick 3 x's. Okay, and go ahead and refer to your notes, which should be on page 14 of your interactive notebook, and then your homework you're working on page 15. Okay, so the 3 x's that I'm going to choose to pick, and you may choose different numbers, but it's okay because when we do go and graph it onto the coordinate plane over here, your line will still be the same line, just with different dots on that line. I might have 3 different dots, someone else may have 3 different dots, but it's really still the same line. So I'm going to choose the numbers 1, 2, and 3, just because. And I'm going to plug all, step 2 is to plug, okay, and then do PEMDAS, okay, because you need your y's. Okay, so I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to do 1 minus 3, because that's my equation, x minus 3, so 1 minus 3. I'm going to do 2 minus 3, and I'm going to do 3 minus 3. So each of these answers will produce a y. So 1 minus 3 gives me negative 2, 2 minus 3 gives me negative 1, and 3 minus 3 gives me 0. Now all of these answers then gives me solutions on my line. 1 comma negative 2 would be an ordered pair, or we can also call that a coordinate. 2 comma negative 1 is also another coordinate, so 2 coming from the x and negative 1 coming from the y. And the last number would be 3 and 0. So then I'm going to go over here to my graph and graph all 3 of those points. Point number 1, 1 comma negative 2, is going to appear in quadrant number 3, and this is just a little review to help you with the quadrants. There it goes. Oh, I'm so sorry, that is actually not correct. It's going to be here in quadrant number 4, 1 and then negative 2. I'm going to start in the center. I'm going to graph 2, negative 1, so 2 means I go to the right 1, right 2, and then I go down 1, and that's also going to appear in quadrant number 4. And then 3, 0, I move 3 to the right, but I don't move up or down, so that's going to be right there. And that's actually not in any quadrant, but it's on the x-axis. So then I will be able to connect my dots here, and when I connect them, I'm sorry, let's go back to the step. Step 3 is to plot the 3 points, and then step 4, very simply, is to connect the dots. So these are our simple steps: picking 3, plugging it in, plotting the 3 points, and then connecting them. So that's our line, and everybody's line should be just like that. But you might have a point here, maybe a point here, maybe a point down here, maybe a point all the way here. But go ahead and make sure that you draw arrows, because this line is a line that goes on forever. Okay, here's question number 10. Question number 10, I'm going to start with picking 3 x's. I'll choose negative 1 and 0 and positive 1. How about that? Okay, my equation says that negative 1 is equal to y, but I don't see an x. There's no x here. So what should I do if there's no x? Well, actually what this equation is saying, it's saying that y is always negative 1. Okay, maybe y means that maybe your bank account, every time you look in it, it's always negative 1. No matter if it's today, tomorrow, 5 days later, 20 days later, 3 years later, it's always going to be negative 1. So what that means is no matter what x's you picked, the outcome for your y will automatically be negative 1. 0 will automatically give you the outcome of negative 1. The number 1 will always give you the outcome of negative 1. And that means that our 3 points are going to be negative 1, negative 1, 0, negative 1, and 1, negative 1. Now, if you chose different numbers than I did, you'll just have that different number for your x, but then your y should be negative 1. So then when you go to graph it, you're going to have negative 1 right here. 0, -1 is going to be right there, and +1, -1 will be right there. And what you should start to see is that, and then if I keep doing a bunch of dots, it's just going to be a straight horizontal line. Horizontal line. And that's pretty special because what it's saying is that it doesn't really matter what your x's are. Remember, the horizontal line is your x. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be negative over here, but it's always just going to consistently be a 1. And this is a constant. It's just constant. Okay. I'm going to skip over to question number 25, right over here in the corner. And number 25 is very similar. Y here is -6. So y is always -6 in this question. So what that's going to tell me is if I choose, let's say I choose 2, 4, and 6 as my x's. Now, my y's will still always be -6, no matter what, giving me -6. 6 will give me -6. So when I go to graph my numbers, I'm going to be around the -6 at the x. So let me go ahead and graph that over here on the same graph. My -6 is down here. If it's 2, it's -6. If x is 4, then y is -6. If it's +6, it's still -6. If it's -6, it's still -6. So what you have here is then your another horizontal line, but passing right through the y-axis on the -6. What you'll notice about number 10 was that the horizontal line passed through on the y-axis. This is our y-axis right here, on the -1, and that's where it passed through. And that's very unique because if I wanted to say that y was equal to 1, then the line would actually appear right here. And I wouldn't even have to do a chart, but I could automatically know that. I think it's disappearing on me. Okay? And one last question for the video today is the last question of the homework, number 26. And I chose it because I think that negative in front of the x might be slightly confusing. So the numbers that I would like to pick for x, and I'm going to choose a negative number, -1. I want 0 because it's neutral, and I'm going to choose a positive, maybe +2. Okay, now you may not choose those numbers, and if you chose all positive, that might have helped you. Now if you chose some negatives, this will also help you too, so I chose a variety. So my equation would go here, -x minus 2. So when I go to plug in a negative number, I will have negative, and then another -1, and then -2. So if I have a negative and a negative, that's going to be a +1 minus a 2, giving me an outcome of -1. And here's where we would use T for teams. T for teams, where we would compare the positives and the negatives. So one number is positive, one is negative. The negative team obviously has more, so I win by 1. My first point that I plot is -1, -1. So I'd go over here, and there it would be in quadrant number 3, where my negatives are. And then for 0, I would plug in -0 minus 2. Well, you know what? When it's negative and a 0, that's really not what it's really saying. It's really like a -1 times a 0. So no, there's no such thing as a -0. It's a neutral number. It's really like a -1 times a 0. So then it's just 0 minus 2, giving me an outcome of -2. So my next point is 0, -2. And I may go a little bit quickly, so please feel free to just rewind if that didn't really make any sense to you. And my second point would be 0, and I don't go left or right because it's 0, and then -2 means I go down. So it's going to be right there. Okay, and then the last point, I chose the number 2, so then I'm going to plug that in negative, and then plug in 2, and then -2. So a -2 minus a 2 is also -4. So my last point is 2, -4. And that's going to be a start in the origin. I move 2 to the right, and then 4 down, giving me my dot here. And when I connect all of my dots, I should get a perfectly straight line. And if I don't, then somewhere along the way I might have made a mistake. There we go, and that's my graph. So it just takes this much work by making the chart to help me get to the graph. Now for some of us, sometimes we don't use the middle section. We can do some of that PEMDAS and arithmetic in our head. And sometimes it's just nice to have it there to show our work and be able to check it. All right, see you tomorrow in class.